Hey, well, thank you very much, everybody who's joined us today for our webinar on taking the impossible training online. We're very luckily joined by Sally Brinkley from AssessTech, who is their operations director, who's here to talk about how you do that and the success that AssessTech have had in response to the current situation. So over to you, Sally, with no further ado.
Cool. I'm not sure I'm going to say how you do it. I'm going to say how we've done it. And we've had some success. I'm just briefly going to give people a quick overview of who AssessTech are and what we do, and then we'll get into it, if that's okay. Right, so don't worry, I don't have loads of slides with loads of words on, but I have got this slide with loads of words on. We're a technology and training company specialising in competence management for the railway industry. So we deliver systems and training in support of all the people in the railway who are running around trying to make sure it's safe. So we're supporting people who are assessing people and managing safety records and that sort of thing. And we supply all of our systems as software as a service. And about half our business is to do with supplying training in support of that. So these are some of the customers we work for. So we've got some fairly heavyweight customers. Most of the big names in the UK use our systems or our services or our training or all of them. So what is our business? Well, we've got three strands to our business. As I said already, we sell some systems, and I'll talk a bit about what that set of technology and the products is in a moment. We deliver a load of training, and we've also got a consultancy arm. I'm not actually going to say anything about the consultancy arm because it's not particularly relevant to today. I'm just going to start by talking about the technology and a bit about why we partner with AssessPlanit, and then a bit about the training and how we've kind of moved that to this new socially distanced world we find ourselves in. So we've got three products. The first one is a competence management system. And this is, broadly speaking, a system for recording assessments. So on the railway, if you have safety critical staff, it's quite important that you know they're competent. Trains are quite dangerous things. We like our drivers to be qualified. And this system, and historically that was done on pieces of paper with people with clipboards. What we've done is made a system with a series of apps so that assessors can go and capture that information online, and then the company can do something with the data. So broadly speaking, it captures assessments, it gives people an engine to investigate incidents with, and issues licenses and permits to work and stuff like that. The second system is a pretty bog standard LMS. It's a learning management system for hosting online courses. And the reason this is important is because if you want to assert someone's competent, you don't just need to assess them, you need to understand that they've been trained properly. And then the third system is a video hosting system. It's like YouTube, but it's private. And that's just a recognition that a lot of learning material is video based. So those three systems work together to support these railway companies in their documentation and processes around safety management and competence management in particular. Have I said enough about that, Joe, do you think?
Yeah. I think the point is that it's that 360 coverage, isn't it? It's not just about that assessment in the at the time. It's about reinforcing that. It's about having access to all the tools that you need to make sure that A, that driver is competent, and B, that you can, or whoever that person is, and B, you can evidence that.
Yeah, perfect. So as I said, we've got these three systems that work together. So the competence management system in the middle there needs to pull records from the learning management system in terms of what training has been done. Also, we have skills fade. Skills fade is a huge problem. So those on the learning management system, you don't just do the course once, it's iterative. You have to go back every year and do the knowledge test and update that. And so that's constantly pulled from the learning management system to the competence management system to keep the record of competence true. It's also quite an interesting scenario with videos. We pull information about who's watched what video. In the past, in order to drive a train, you don't just need to be able to drive a train. You need route knowledge for the route you're driving. It's not like driving a car when you stop when you see a signal and you look at the other cars. if you didn't start slowing your train down until you saw the station, you'd be bang through the other side of it before you knew about it. So you need to know route knowledge. And historically, route knowledge has been achieved by going and sitting in the cab with the guy who's driving the train to try and learn it. And that's obviously hugely time consuming and resource hungry. So what we and other people have done is basically strapped GoPro cameras on the front of the trains and recorded it, then taken that video and annotated it with the learning points so that it's available as a video. And now drivers can do route learning via watching a video. That's not all they do. They do have to go and get assessed driving the route by an assessor, but that's the way they do some of their learning.
Yeah, I guess that means they can do it whenever they want as well. As you say, if you're stuck to when the train's running, then obviously that limits the amount, the availability.
Exactly, and in fact, you can do your own refreshing on that. So that data is pulled into the competence management system as well to make this picture. And obviously, some of those videos end up being part of training courses as well. So we've got these three systems that work nicely together. However, training is a big part of competence management, as we've already said, and most training these days is a kind of blended learning thing, a bit of trainer-led training and a bit of online self-paced training. And we've got somewhere to host the online training, but there's nothing on our systems that does anything about the trainer-led training. So we've partnered with AssessPlanit to use their training management system to do that. So that basically what happens is you put your training courses on the AssessPlanit system and you book the people on it and you organize your rooms and your trainers and your projectors and whatever else happens, and it sends out joining instructions and all those good things. And then when the course starts, it automatically enrolls the people on the training courses on the learning management system. So they attend the classroom training. They then do all the tests on the learning management system on AssessBook, and when those tests are complete, the data about who can and can't do what is pumped into the competence management system in the middle. So it's all a big joined up picture. So that's why AssessPlanit are a really good partner for us, because they do all the bits we don't do.
All the boring bits.
Oh, they're not that boring. But yeah, if you like. So hopefully that explains that. So that's enough about systems. Let's talk about training, because that's what we're here to talk about today. So what sort of training does AssessTech do? Well, we run courses specific to the railway, and there are a number of categories of these. We do a lot about, we're a City and Guilds centre in our own right, and we offer a lot of the City and Guilds awards in the learning and development arena. And we offer these largely to people in management grades within the railway. So we train people to be assessors, we train them to be internal quality assurers or verifiers, we train people to be trainers, and we train people to be instructors and coaches and mentors and all of that good stuff. And that's fairly standard stuff. You get that sort of training across many industries, but it's got a kind of railway bent on it. We then do some courses that are much more specific to railway in terms of responding to and investigating incidents. Now, these, frankly, are right dull old things if you're not careful. Okay, so when a major incident like a derailment happens in real life, it's quite the opposite of dull. It's kind of a super frantic, super interesting, difficult thing. But trying to train people to do it, it's about learning lots of process and procedure. And the training can be really dull unless you find a way to kind of bring it to life. So what we've done for the classroom is to build these things called interactive training aids, which is what the marketing department likes to call them. They're board games. Okay, so they're fancy board games that allow you to, they're not open play board games, they're trainer-led. So, but what you do is you move pieces around or play cards to earn tokens that allow you to achieve things in order to get the objective of either responding to correctly or investigating the incident.
And I assume in a classroom, Sally, the engagement is really high for that type of course. If you've gone from something that's quite a dry, hands-off kind of listening to someone talk about operational procedures into something that's a bit more hands-on and a little bit more engaged. I assume that's a bit more engaging for people.
Yeah, it is. It's actually, one of them is a bit like playing Monopoly. We haven't actually had anybody flip the board up yet, but you could, I suppose. Yeah, it can get quite heated, and it's quite good fun, and it's a good. We don't get me wrong. We don't put people in a room and go play the board game. We do a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of formal teaching using PowerPoint or group exercises with flip charts and stuff. And then once we've done all the underpinning knowledge, we play the game to reinforce that and to sort of bring it to life.
It's a really good example of using gamification in learning, you know, to take those game aspects and apply them to something that's really boring. It's a really, really good example of how to use gamification to increase your engagement. So
the day lockdown hit, we had 6 of these incident responder courses in the diary. And somebody said to me, well, you can't do those online, that's impossible, which was a bit like a red rag to a bull. So anyway, we did, and we'll go through how. So let's just talk a bit about what happened the very day we decided we all needed to be socially distant. So about 6 weeks ago, we had to move to this socially distant world. So what we did is we did the easy stuff first. Okay, so we built a virtual training room, and I've got a little very short video to show you of that. Got ourselves a Zoom conferencing service, and basically went about talking the customers into switching those courses to online video conference delivered courses. Now, I think personally, if I tried to do that in any other world, I would have been met with a lot of resistance. But the fact is, these people need to be trained, and they're simply not allowed to go and be in a classroom. So suddenly people's minds are open to the possibilities, and they're willing to try things that I think would have been, I think if 3 months ago I'd said to someone, you know, it'd be cheaper to do your training online, why don't we do it via a video conference? I wouldn't have got past the end of the first sentence, basically. So anyway, let's just have a little look at this, the video for this training room. I'll shut up for a bit because there is some sound on it and it's quite quick.
We're downloaded 2 assessments, isn't it?
2 assessments and the verification forms.
And verification, yeah.
So,
Well, do you literally just want the assessment, or do you want all the other stuff with it?
if you've got access to like the planning of it, we'll do that and have a look at that as well.
So as you can see, it's not rocket science, okay? So the chap training there is Paul Wallace, and he really likes to train standing up. I have no idea why. We do have chairs in the room when other people use it, but he likes to train standing up. And what we've simply done is given him a big screen TV so that he can see everybody and he can see what they can see. And then we've set up a couple of webcams. One's pointing at him and one's pointing at a good old-fashioned paper-based flip chart. He's using Zoom. You absolutely do have an online whiteboard on Zoom, but in order to type on it, you have to sort of get down and look at the computer, and that doesn't look very good. And also, if you want to draw pictures, unless you're super good with a mouse, it all gets to look a bit rubbish a bit quickly. So when he needs to do things, he can move to the flip chart.
I think there's a couple of points here in terms of best practice for these kind of setups. Some of which you've absolutely nailed here, Sally. So absolutely right. You know, make sure that your instructor can see the participants on that big screen. Make sure your lighting's right. Make sure that you've got the technology in place. So big screens, webcams. Make sure that you're using either a room that's soundproofed or somewhere where you're not going to get a lot of background noise. And I know there's one thing that we discussed before this, Sally, that you've had trouble with exactly this week, which is make sure that you've got a good stable internet connection.
Yeah, and that's been one of the frustrations. So one of the reasons we've set this virtual training room up in the office rather than having all of our trainers doing it from their spare rooms is simply because we do have a very reliable high-speed internet connection at that site. And normally it would be quite a noisy office, but because everybody else is working from home, it's dead quiet.
Yeah, and I assume, so what did you do? So you've transitioned your easy training. So
absolutely. So we've transitioned the easy training. We did that in about 2 days, so all of the normal stuff that we do on PowerPoint or wherever it's easy. But what about those board games? Well, they were a bit of a challenge, to be honest. We did play about one day trying to point a camera at a table and have 2 people trying to play the board games, moving the counters for everybody as a practice. that was frankly hopeless. Because everybody kept standing in front of it, you couldn't see what was going on. So we decided we'd better develop some online versions of these games. Now, rather than develop something from scratch, what we actually did was, we're fairly lucky to have a guy in the office who is a complete board game geek, who spends his weekends on Skype and everything else, playing online versions of board games. He plays online Monopoly, you name it, basically. And there are a series of these online engines that gamers use. So we evaluated a few of those, and we picked one called Tabletopia. It is Tabletopia because it's tabletop. I think it should be Tabletopia because frankly it's the utopia for doing this type of stuff. And I've got a couple of videos to show you of some people playing these games online. Now, I'll just play a little bit of each one because you probably won't necessarily understand what's going on if you don't understand the subject matter. But both the videos are available in full on our website if anyone wants to look at them. So I'll just play them, Joe, and you tell me when you think people have had enough. So this one's the incident cause kit. This is all about playing cards to investigate and find the underlying causes for incidents.
So I'm going to have a look at my unsafe condition and see if I can play that on the board. I don't think I can at the moment. But I can play my underlying cause job card. Register information on the day. So I'm going to play that here because it matches 1 and 2 of the lines. And I'm going to say that this stop short door release, because of the knowledge-based mistake of the driver, the fact that he hadn't been to the station very often, and his situation violation, he saw that he was going to, he thought he was going to overrun, so he smashed on the brakes to try and stop early. The fact that there was, he hadn't been given the written information of the route card on the day, which he should have been picked up. He should have got his diagram, and that was one of the underlying causes of this incident. Are there any objections to that?
Sounds okay to me.
I'm not happy he was smashed. I mean, he may have smashed. Okay.
Okay.
So
he put the brake on heavily.
Okay, let's just clarify. So the written information on the day, what was it? He didn't have his job card.
Yeah, he didn't have his route card.
Can we move on to the next one, Sam?
Place he was
Out of interest, who won that game? Because I can see that you're actually in there.
Yeah, okay, so that one's all about trying to investigate the causes of incidents and having a good old chinwag about whether things were actually caused by the things that were said on the cards. So it's interactive, and through that people learn the cause model. This one is about responding to an incident. So when I said earlier, when these incidents happen, all people with various different roles get involved. And in this game, the participants are collaborating to solve the incident. So they're all working together.
Try again. Okay, so we need to roll more than a 9 on our dice. Okay, got a +2 because you answered the question correctly. So let's see what our roll of the dice +2 is. So 4 + 6 is 10, +2 is 12. 12 is more than 9, so you are able to succeed. Okay, you've dealt with the crying people in the tunnel. You've looked at the staff welfare of everybody that's involved. Okay, so you have succeeded. So
Excellent.
take that off, and that has shown off your teamwork. Is a green token. Your experience and your use of equipment. Okay. So that was your second go, Carla. So you've got one more left.
What can I do?
So the next thing. So we need to. Overall, our main objective is to go to the station approach with our communications, teamwork, and equipment skills. Or to go and help out with the incident, you can go to the rendezvous point, the track, or the station.
How many moves have I got?
One left. So you can make it to the rendezvous point or the access point.
I'll just go to the train.
Let's go on our way to the train. So move this one to there. There we go. And that's the end of your turn. So some more stuff turns up. So we now need to assess the damage to the track.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
So basically, it takes about 40 minutes to play these games. In that one, all sorts of things are happening every time the day moves on or the hour moves on. A new thing occurs, and they have to run around and sort it all out basically before it all goes horribly wrong. Cool, but they're quite easy to play online basically. So,
interest, was that something that you developed, or was that something that the tabletop here developed for you, or did you just develop it using their engine essentially?
So the original board game was invented by the guy who was doing most of the talking on there, called Brock, and we got a graphic artist to help us, a graphic design person to help us draw the boards and create the pieces. And what we actually did was I made an account on Tabletop here and started doing it, and then ran out of time, and actually got the guy who was the graphic artist to go and set it up. It's not very difficult actually. If you've got a slight technical bent at all, it's not lots harder than, you know, if you go and make online learning content with something like Articulate Storyline
or yeah,
it's you need some skills, but you don't need to be able to write code.
So out of interest, Sally, how long did it take AssessTech to turn that around from when you sort of decided to go to an online game?
I think it was probably 1 to 2 days of solid effort for each game.
Right. Okay. So that's amazing how quickly you managed to turn.
Yeah.
That around.
So not loads, but that was helped by the fact that we owned all the assets for the board game in the first place, because
so it's your intellectual property. In essence.
Yeah. I mean, if we'd have had to go, so we already had the backs and the fronts of all the cards. If we'd have had to go and make those, it would have taken ages. But actually making the online version of it wasn't very difficult. And if people on here really want to do that, I can certainly give you contact details for the guy who did it for us. He'd be more than happy for a price.
Yeah, I'm sure. And what's the response been like? What's the feedback been like since you moved online?
It's very similar to when we play it in the classroom. So in the classroom, some people love it and they get super enthusiastic about it. It's a bit like Christmas, you know, when some people go, oh, bloody hate Trivial Pursuit, right? And you do always get someone who just doesn't like the delivery mechanism. But actually, it's no different. And people, and also I think people are at home and they're a bit bored, and this is it's at least a bit lively. So it's been pretty good. I would say the amount people like or dislike it is probably no different than how much they like or dislike it when it's in the classroom.
Cool.
So the final thing we have to do is we do quite a lot of assessing of people. I talked about skills fade earlier. So we regularly, oh, hang on, I'm on the wrong window. Apologies. We regularly go and assess people when they're assessing people. So we check people's assessor skills, we check their trainer skills and that sort of thing. And normally what happens is we follow them around the station. So the dispatcher's dispatching a train, the assessor's assessing the dispatcher, and we're assessing the assessor, right? And obviously that's not social distance. So what we've been doing is we've been using remote video conferences so we can observe from a distance. So basically the assessor's been carrying around the camera or the phone or whatever it is they're using, sort of pointing it at them, and still observing the person who's doing the work. And we've been using the video service to record this for evidence, which has been pretty good. At the moment, managers are still local to staff. Social distancing is really difficult on a train. it's pretty difficult in the main parts of the train. It's actually impossible inside a driving cab. You can't get 2 meters away from somebody in a room that's less than 2 meters square. So it is a challenge. So we're just in the process of trialing. We've done a bit of investigation. We're just in the process of trialing wearable cameras. So you can get some that you put on glasses or on earpieces, so they sort of point at your head, they look where you're looking. You get some that's strapped to the body. They work in some circumstances when you're trying to assess somebody doing something. It's really handy to have that first person view. In other cases, it's better if you like stick a camera to the wall so you can see the person and what they're doing. It's not working super well. It's a bit limited, works well in some scenarios and not in others. There are also lots of rules and regulations about transmitting equipment and video equipment and anything that'll make a noise or have a light on it inside a driving cab. So there are some challenges there, but we're currently investigating that. And
out of interest, do you see sort of remote assessment or sort of remote access for these types of activities becoming the new norm?
So I think the manager being remote from the person they're assessing is probably not going to become the norm. I think that's probably that feels like a backward step. But us being remote from the assessor could definitely stay. I mean, I've gone from a situation where if we do this all over the UK, I'm based in Guildford, so if we need to assess a manager in Derby, one of my assessors spends 3.5 hours travelling to Derby, an hour doing the assessment and 3.5 hours coming home. Whereas he can just get on the Zoom conference for an hour. He can do 4 or 5 of these in a day instead of 1. So
it's more time and cost effective then, I assume. Yeah,
and that means we don't need to charge so much for it. So I think some of this will stay with us. I think we'll learn some lessons that we won't need to unlearn, but not everything. I think it'll just become another tool in our bag.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd say a little bit about what challenges I think we've faced as we've done this. Or have I waxed on too much and spent too much time? No.
Go for it.
So my biggest challenge, or our biggest challenge, has definitely been a technology shy customer base. Okay, railways, not everybody, there are all sorts of people on the railway, but there are a lot of people of a certain age who are definitely a bit technology shy.
I think that's in training in general, Sally. I think a lot of training providers are running, anyone who's pivoting to online is up against the sort of the digital natives that are joining the workforce now won't be ready to be trained for a few years. Whereas you're absolutely right. People who are a little bit older or don't have access to that type of technology, it's always better to
and I think it comes in a few flavors. So I think sometimes people are just reluctant to try kind of newfangled things. Sometimes they're just afraid of them because they're not familiar with them. And actually, in some cases, people just haven't got the technology. So we've got customers who haven't rolled out laptops and tablets and things to their frontline staff. So the technology not rolled out one is a bit difficult to get by because you certainly cannot play that online game on a phone. I mean,
no.
Your fingers are too fat, it's too difficult. But mostly, I think we've got over this issue better because we've had to than we would have done normally.
Yeah.
And when you say to people, look, the choice here is don't have the training or try it, then it's an easier.
I think it's about having that relationship, isn't it, with your clients that there needs to be that level of trust with you. To make sure that they can make that pivot and they can sort of take
absolutely. We have had some issues about internet speed and reliability, not so much at our end, but in terms of the people attending the courses. Honestly, there's no answer to that other than to be patient.
Yeah, and I think to a certain degree it comes down to making sure that you brief your learners before they join the session, that they're aware of what they need to have in the room. To be ready for that session.
Yeah, and you need to engender a bit of empathy for it. It's no good.
Exactly,
good. People just have to calm down about it. They can't get annoyed, you do need to change your trainer behaviour a bit. You know, we do a lot, we work really hard in a classroom to get everybody talking and interacting. And actually, if they do that online and all come at once, they all interrupt each other. There's a delay on the line, so they start speaking and then he stops and then he starts, and it's all a bit disjointed. So for example, when you're doing a brainstorm, you normally say, shout out all the things to do with whatever, and you write them down. You can't do that, it doesn't work. You have to do the thing where, you say if you've got 6 people in the room, you say, you give me one, you give me one, you give me one, you give me one. You need to do that. So you need to, your trainers need to manage the interactions much more actively. And selling has been a challenge. So the day we hit lockdown, we tend to have a full order book for our training for about 6 to 8 weeks ahead, and then a somewhat full order book for maybe a couple of months after that. So day 1 of lockdown, we've got a full order book, and the challenge is convincing people to move them online. Day, wherever we are now, 30 or something, we're now getting towards the end of the period where our order book is full, and and certainly in the first 4 weeks, we didn't sell anything. So convincing people to move existing bookings online is one thing, convincing them to make bookings is another. And what I've actually had to do in the end was just say to people, do you know what, try it. You know, we'll run it online. If your people really don't like it and they really can't get on, we'll do it again after all this nonsense is over, and we'll do it for free. And then they don't feel that they're taking such a risk. Yeah. But actually, we haven't needed to do that. You know, I was trying to do a head count yesterday about how many people we'd trained in the last 4 weeks, or on online courses in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I stopped when I got to 200. So we've trained over 200 people, and we've had 2 incidents where people gave up. And one was because he couldn't work his computer, so he kept losing his windows and he couldn't see what he was looking at. And he just got fed up and the top came off of his head. And I think also he had like kids at home, and it was just too difficult. And another one where he just didn't like it. And he just said, I'll just have to do this. You know, I can't do it. I'll just have to do it again when all this is over. But actually that's a 99% acceptance rate. And it's not about making people, it's not about making people happy with it when you do it. It's about making people feel comfortable that they're going to be happy about it before you do it. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. As I say, I mean, for me, that's all about building that relationship with your clients, or potential clients, making sure that you nurture them. I've seen loads of content from AssessTech over the last few weeks on LinkedIn, and that's certainly something that we've been concentrating a lot on, is just trying to create value for people, offer as much advice as we can, so that if they do want to make that switch and they do want to take that leap of faith, that they know that we're here to support them with that, and that's all you really can do at this moment in time. No, absolutely, and I
the fact that it's, this is the new norm, or more or less. Yeah, and I completely understand that, and I completely understand the reluctance as well. I mean, it is weird. Yeah, I mean, it's unprecedented times, isn't it? It's difficult to plan for something that has never happened in our lifetime, and certainly in my lifetime, has ever happened. Nothing like this has ever happened before. So how do you plan for that? How do you attack that? So I can certainly understand people's nervousness, but I think you're absolutely right. The technology is out there, and people just need to take that leap of faith and understand that the engagement's going to be there. And as you say, if you change the behaviour of your instructors and your trainers to make sure that they are still capturing that engagement, there's absolutely no reason why your training, whatever it is, should be just as impactful as it is. What I found when I've been doing training with our providers, I've actually found that I've been engaged more, almost, because it's almost when you sat there at your desk and you're in that session, there's no distractions other than you and the training itself. So I've actually found that I've perhaps been a little bit more engaged. And I think also people are craving a bit of human contact. I mean, I live on my own, so I'm much more inclined to want to sit on a voice conference than I am normally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly something that we at AssessPlanit are all about as well. If anyone who is on this webinar does have any questions or just wants to have a chat about anything relating to the training industry and how they can make improvements, then AssessPlanit, we're certainly here to have a chat and have a call and offer advice on how we can specifically help or anything else really. Which brings me neatly on, Sally. Just to finish off today's session, I thought it might be quite useful just to open up to some questions from the some questions from the audience.
Okay.
So I've been looking down a few of them. Some of them we've already answered off. So could you envisage going back to face-to-face training, or will this approach be the new norm?
So I think we'll do a mix in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And I think it's not so much about the subject matter as it is about what people. So all of us in the training industry understand that different people are receptive to different training styles. Okay, some people like to be talked at, other people like to read things, and this is no different. Some people will like to come to a classroom, and some people will like to go online. And I think going forwards, we'll just offer both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do an industry survey every year, and still 72% of people who responded to that have said that they will still do instructor-led training. So there is going to be instructor-led training, whether it's classroom or not, or a combination. But certain training you can't really do. You know, there are certain things that you can't do via Zoom. Some of it has to be hands-on. So I think there'll always. Well,
in fact, there's certain things you can't do in the classroom. I mean, we do a thing called PTS training, which is personal track safety. Yeah. And basically, when you train them for the first time, you've got to march them up and down a railway track, right? That's part of the requirements. You can't even do that in a classroom. But we do that the first time we train them, and then when we do the refresher, we just do the knowledge. And there's no reason why the refresher can't then be on a video.
Yeah, it can be online. Yeah. And out of interest, have AssessTech, have you tackled any other technical training in terms of your sort of suite of courses, other than the accident? Have you got any plans to do any more board games or anything like that?
We do. We've got all sorts of plans, most of which got put on hold because of the coronavirus. But we're probably going to launch some more training for drivers. We're probably going to do the Part A rules for drivers. So when you learn to be a trained driver, you can do your Part A with anyone, which is the rules, and then you go and do your Part B with the person you're going to work for, where you learn to drive their very trains and their very routes. And the way the industry works at the moment is the companies take people and do the Part A and the Part B with them. And what we're thinking about is setting up a training academy so we can do the Part A training, and then people can recruit people who are already half trained.
Oh, cool. That's great.
And there's a few things around that. We're launching, one of the things I'm launching today, actually, and I'll send some links out, is some free hour-long sessions to allow people to do refreshers on the very topics that use those games. So if you go on our website, there's some links on there where you can book yourself on one of these sessions, and you can play the incident cause kit or the incident response kit. In fact, Joe, you should come and play one. You'd like.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I really wanted to actually have a play today, actually, but I'm definitely gonna take you up on that. Couple more questions just before we finish off, because we are almost out of time. So, out of interest, what's the feedback been like from your trainers, Sally? So you mentioned you've set up your virtual room. Was it Chris likes to deliver standard?
Paul was the guy in the video.
Paul, yeah. So what's the feedback been like from your trainers?
Actually, I would say he quite likes it. And he was probably one of the more reluctant ones, because he himself can be a bit technology shy, but actually it works really smoothly. And he certainly likes not having to hoof around the countryside.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And he's managed to get, he would probably, if he was on here, he would probably say he's been impressed by how well engaged people have managed to be on it. I think he was a bit worried he'd be standing in front of the telly talking to himself.
Yeah, cool. So we've got time for one last question. And I think this might be quite, you might have some insight on this, Sally. So I've seen you use some simulators, don't you, in your training suite. So have you got any thoughts on VR, virtual using that in
Actually,
training?
yeah, we work with a company called 3D VSL. There's a guy there called Brendan who makes a load of this stuff. So if I take you back to the Oh, I won't do it because I can't work the computer. But the if you remember the slide that had the three systems on it with the accessplanit system on the bottom, we also have an integration with the system with the 3D VSL training apps, so that they make apps that go on the VR headsets and also on tablets, that where the results of that training then gets pulled onto AssessBook and into the competence record. So we've done quite a lot with that. It's dead interesting.
Yeah.
In fact, you might want to get him for one of your webinars.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe we should. Yeah.
Cool stuff.
I guess we're just about out of time, so I'd just like to finish by saying thank you very much for your time today, Sally. It's been really insightful. I know that we've got a lot of good positive feedback from the questions and comments. Thank you very much, everybody who's attended today. Any questions that are outstanding, we will get back to you after today's session. And if you do have any questions about either AssessTech or AssessPlanit, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Sally. We're more than happy to answer for any other questions and help anyone whoever they would like to be helped.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Thanks, Sally. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe and have a lovely evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.